Welcome, listeners. I thought I would start today with a couple of shout-outs to fans who have sent text messages through the podcast show notes texting link. It's a great way to reach out. Justin Holman, thanks for your comment on the Michelle Vesterby episode. Hope you all get together again at the World Championship. And Claire F., yes, let's call those non-official crew at Australia supporters. No one wants to break the rules. I also want to remind listeners that our next episode will be an Ask Me Anything episode with the one and only Steve King. Check our socials for the link to join our live Zoom meeting on June 23rd at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and ask Steve anything you want. Thanks, Steve.
You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today I have 4 special guests. All coaches, all 515 finishers, and all female. It's another special roundtable discussion episode of 515, the Ultra Podcast, coming up next. People write to me at 515ultraman@gmail.com or reach out through Facebook to ask how they can support the show since it's offered for free. Well, the next time a friend or family member is looking for a podcast to listen to, tell them that you enjoy 515 the Ultra Podcast, or share my Facebook and Instagram posts on your timeline to reach your friends. It is really that simple. Recommendations are one of the most important ways that podcasts grow. And proof to that point is that the last episode release had a download from country number 100. Over the years, people in 100 different countries around the world have downloaded episodes of this podcast. You know our audience is niche, so I could not have reached this milestone without your help. And very soon, we will reach 2,000 different cities with downloads. That is truly a worldwide reach. So once again, thank you for listening and telling your friends to listen too. After the success and positive feedback of the first roundtable discussion I had with various race directors and a couple of longtime followers of the ultra scene around the topic of the state of ultra, which centered around the challenges of putting on events and the price of competing for the athletes, I thought it would be a good idea to get another roundtable together to discuss the state of ultra in regard to the women who compete and why they are getting so strong in this sport. So today I have asked some female coaches to join me, all of whom have competed in the 515 distance events before and who work with female triathletes on a daily basis. My first guest was recently on the podcast last season, season 5, episode 10. If you listen to that, you will know that she's a pro triathlete and in the ultra world won the Ultra 520K Canada in 2015. And I don't mean that she won the women's race. She won the race. She is also a women's champion at Australia and at the Ultraman World Championships back in 2016. She is my Aussie counterpart from our teaching exchange. Welcome back, Kate Bevilacqua.
Thanks for having me.
And now I know you and your husband, Guy, are going to be holding a training camp in Phuket next month, July 14th to the 21st. So people, you should check that out on the website, GK Endurance, to see if there's any spots left by the time this airs. That's still running?
That's still running. Thanks for mentioning it. Yeah, we're staying at Tanipura, the famous sports training hotel resort. Fantastic place for training, and obviously for us, those in Australia, it gets you out of the winter, but everyone is welcome to come and join us.
Excellent. Next up is another Ultra 520K Canada Women's Champion, this time from 2019. She offers not just physical coaching, but also counseling, as she has a master's in counseling psychology. Her coaching service is called Reach, Stretch, Grow from Whistler, BC, and a team member helping me out with the Ultra Tri Fest Canada coming to her hometown in the summer of 2025. Welcome to the podcast, Christine Suter.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here among some amazing women athletes. So, yeah, excited for this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. Also joining us today is my guest from season 3, episode 3, a 2-time Guinness record setter, best-selling author, and 3-time 515 racer, Shangri-La Redden from Feisty Fox Coaching in Los Angeles. Welcome back.
Thank you, Larry. Hi, everyone.
And the final panelist for this round table is a former pro triathlete with 66 Ironman triathlons. In 2013, she became Ultraman World Champion after finishing second there in 2010. In her role as a coach, she is working with athletes who are taking on Race Across America as a 4-person team starting tomorrow. This is someone I've always wanted to have on the podcast for a while, founder of Biscay Coaching and a Smash Fest queen. It's Hillary Biscay. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And I did offer an invitation to Dee Dee Griesbauer as well, and she wanted to be here. Unfortunately, the time that we are recording this, she is celebrating her wedding anniversary, 24th wedding anniversary. So congratulations to her and her husband, Dave. And Dee Dee is also participating in a RAAM team this year on a 4-person team, and she's going with three men. And they will be starting tomorrow if you are listening to this on the release day. So good luck to Team Slow Twitch Good Life Racing.
Woohoo.
I want to play you guys something here to kind of set up our conversation. I'm just going to move it over here so it comes through the speakers. You may have seen this.
There's never been a woman that has finished all 5 laps of this race. Why do you think that is?
The race is too hard for women. They are simply not tough enough to do it. And I get to say that for as long as it goes, that no woman proves me wrong.
I'm hoping that you guys were able to hear that through my microphone. Were you able to hear that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So
Is that Cowman?
That was Laz, who.
Oh, that was Laz. I thought we were on Ultraman.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't see the video.
Okay, yeah, no, that was Laz. That was from 9 years ago. He was speaking to a documentary crew about Barkley marathons, and that was going around the internet again back in March because, of course, finally the woman did complete his race, and that was Jasmine Paris. She's a 40-year-old British runner. She completed the 5 loops of the race and was the first woman to do so. So with that in mind, setting the tone for this, I want to get into talking about how it is that, there's so much success coming from the women in endurance sports. And I don't want to say recently because it's always been there. I mean, you ladies can attest to that, but it definitely seems like it's picking up even more and more. Dee Dee might be a good place for us to start off. She has the fastest time in the Ultra 515 for women. She has her world record time of 22 hours, 48:31. And she also just won the World Championships recently, 2022, at the age of 52. So tell me, ladies, what do you think is happening, number one, with women in the sport, and number two, is the age a factor? Is being older a benefit?
Can I start?
Sure.
All right. Well, I do think, just us or the rest of Ultraman finishers showing up and showing that it is possible, it's really motivating other individuals in the older generation to actually go for it. So when I saw Dee Dee actually, won at 52 years old, I think that would actually even open up more that it is indeed possible. Because, I mean, Kate, Hillary, you guys, when I look at their records, you guys were like 32, 39, 36, and also Shanna. They're like younger, right? And then seeing 52, I think that would actually call more individuals at 50s or even over 40s, or that it is indeed possible. So I think that was a really, really good start, Dee Dee.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's more of just other women showing that it's possible. I don't necessarily think much has changed. It's just a belief now, and seeing some people do it and realizing, oh wow, like if they can do it, I've got nothing to lose by giving it a go, and putting themselves out there, and women encouraging women to, you know, to be able to do it. There is science behind it now. We have a better understanding of what sort of things we should be doing and when, and how to treat our bodies, you know, during, you know, menopause, and what things we can be doing to make us stronger. So those things have advanced to allow us to maybe perform a lot better. But I think the biggest factor is, you know, just the change in psychology and the way people are thinking, and it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that, you know, we're seeing a lot more, like Courtney Dauwalter, who you see as an ultra runner. I mean, she is amazing, but I think you're right, is that we're seeing women who are older or who are achieving, and it does make it like, oh, well, maybe I can do it too. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing. I also think that the way that women are training now, as you were saying, Kate, with you know, what we know about perimenopause and going into menopause, and really, you know, working this strength component. You already have the endurance, and that is still there, and then you're building up that strength. I think that has a lot to do with it too. All the scientific studies, yeah.
Hillary, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what, you know, what these women are saying for sure. I think, you know, it seems like each year there's somebody, or every 2 years, over the Ultraman distance, there is someone stepping up to raise the bar in some way, be it in terms of speed, be it in terms of the age at which you could go X speed, be it in terms of the number you could do successfully in one season, all those kinds of things. And I do think, though, that not necessarily like the older the better. There is going to be a point of diminishing returns, and I do think, just based on the like hundreds of athletes that I've coached over Ironman distance and ultra distance, both running and Ultraman over decades now, I do think we really need to give credit where credit is due. And I would say that Dee Dee doing what she did at 52 was, I mean, a kind of like outlier performance. It's not to say that will never be done by a 52-year-old again, but that was truly exceptional. And I don't necessarily think that, you know, let's go to 56 and 60 and we're going to get faster. Not necessarily. So I do think there is going to be, like, at some point we're going to go over the hump of the mountain, but it is certainly, I think it's an event that does favor the more mature athlete, not just physiologically, but more so probably, if anything, mentally,
right,
and emotionally, because I think often what you see with like the hotshot young guns who are really speedy, who take on this race, where they fail time and time again, if they do, which they can come out and have an absolute blinder. But when you see those kind of athletes fail, it's because of just all of the sort of uncontrollables over the course of a race like this, that they, I think, don't have the experience or the wherewithal or the perspective necessarily to grapple with the way that your more mature athlete does. And that is really where your more seasoned athlete is going to have an advantage over this kind of a race.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago when, you know, early 30s was like the youngest people in the race. And it was majority of 40 and 50-year-olds that were doing these races, both the men and the women. And I think it's probably for that reason. We have seen some of the more young guys, I think, more than women, coming in and tearing it up. But for the women in particular, Do you think there's anything to that mental side that as you grow a little bit older, a little more experienced, I'm sure it helps both in the men and the women, but do you think, is there an edge to the women in that regard in any way? Like just the way women and men race and treat life in general, you know, like I don't want to be too.
You're gonna get us in trouble.
Yeah, no, I don't want to get myself in trouble. But you know, there's a lot of the macho men go out there and just pound it, and then they might fall apart and not know what to do. Whereas a woman approaches life a little bit differently.
I think that Hillary made a really important point when she mentioned, you know, Dee Dee being an outlier, and that's probably the same for myself and for Hillary, because you know, we come from professional athlete backgrounds. So for us to be performing at the level that we did in some ways is sort of expected. Again, not at 52, but, you know, we've had years and years in a lifetime of doing that stuff. So what we want to see and what we are seeing now, which is the exciting part, is that, you know, people that don't come from any sort of triathlon background are just jumping in and doing an ultra distance event or doing an ultra running event. And that's what's amazing and fantastic. And in particular, you know, more women now, you know, that have had kids and families and realizing, hey, I can still go out and do this. You know, it doesn't have to be over after they've reached that point of life. Mentally, well, look, I don't know. They all say that women are a little bit more. They do. Yeah, exactly. Like we read it everywhere. I'm just stating the facts. And you know, the longer the event goes, you know, maybe it is an advantage that females have.
The longer it goes, the more it becomes a mental game, right? And so therein, you know, potentially I think lies our advantage. But to Kate's point about I mean, Dee Dee, for example, she highlights an important point there, and this is something that I always, you know, my apparel brand is fortunate enough to sponsor Dee Dee, so I get to be on a lot of Zoom calls with her. And one thing I always really highlight about that I think is just so important for people to understand is that Dee Dee is a case study in what the results sort of and the look like if you're doing absolutely everything right in the form of, you know, prehab, rehab, recovery, nutrition. I mean, you name it, she checks every single box every day, 24/7, 365. And if you want to know what that will get you at, you know, 52, 53, that's what it gets you. But it is an absolute like full-time job. I mean, she is just, and she's been approaching the sport that way. We turned pro the same year for, you know, 20 years. And her discipline and level of commitment is truly, you know, second to none. And that is no small part of her success over, you know, this distance as well.
Yeah, I agree that she's definitely the outlier. That being said, Ultraman Canada in 2022, the top 5 finishers, 4 were female. So Amy Robitaille was the winner. Leanda Cave, another pro, came second. Your friend Marla came fourth. And AA Girard came in 5th. I think it was Christian Isaacson that was sandwiched in there to represent the men. Thank you, Christian. So that's like four of 5 there. And a week later, Susan Evans at the Ultra 520, she was the women's winner, and she's 63 years old. So, yes, Dee Dee's an outlier, but there has been this surge of women being very successful.
Ultraman Arizona had a similar, 4 of the top 7 were women at Ultraman Arizona just. And that one, I loved how many strong women were like on the starting line day one. I mean, you knew they were going to be a factor overall for sure. I mean, it was just great to see such a critical mass of strong women there. But then conditions ended up being absolutely gnarly, so gnarly. And there, the women really rose to the occasion. And it was really a great kind of testament to that mind over matter kind of event, which it always is anyways, but they had just such drastic, temperature swings and cold and pissing down rain and all the things. And so that was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I had Michelle Vesterby on the podcast right after that, and she was telling me about her race, and we talked about these things, and now that's another person who's gone. She said in the podcast, I'm more in mommy mode now. Like I'm taking that time, and I heard, I think it was an Olympic athlete today on the news saying that nowadays becoming a mother for an athlete is a comma, not a period in their sporting life. And I thought that's spot on. I think that's what's happening in the females that are going through now, is that it doesn't end just because you decide you want to raise a family. And you guys all coach these women that are raising families or doing that kind of thing. So is that one of the factors now? Like, has the shift changed it where you're not the mommy homemaker anymore and you have to give up your life, that you can continue on in your sport? Do you think that's one of the things that's allowing women to continue to grow and therefore go into their later ages still being active? Christine, I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah, I think, some of the athletes I see, they're still, the mom time is still taking away. They're still the primary kind of caregiver, and that's hard. But I do see that when the kids are gone, then they're like, my time. And then they're going. So they're maintaining through that childbearing years and child rearing, I should say. And then they're coming and saying, okay, now this is a bit of my time. So that's what I see. I don't know if anybody else is seeing that different. And
So for the athletes I've coached, like what I'm seeing is that the husband or even single moms, they are still able to still manage their time to get into the triathlon or endurance events. These are the individuals, the women's just like, hey, I need something for my health. And then they go after the sport. So they make things happen. And I'm so amazed. So like, for example, one of our athletes is like 8 kids. And there are 8 kids still all at home. How could you even do that? But there's like the communication that, I don't know, that they're able to do amongst in the home. So I think, which is amazing to see. And then also, even so like 40s, 50s, like still, like even with kids that are little, they're still able to do it if they want it. It's more balancing act. And I think it's more like mental health, not just physical, basically.
Well, Hillary, you had one of your children in the shot with you here just now. You can speak from experience.
Yeah, I would imagine that for an athlete like Michelle, with the base and the speed, that she has in the bank, to parlay that into success over this distance, might take less sort of single-minded intensity and focus on a daily basis than it would for her to be charging towards a top 10 overall finish in Kona. And so I think that she's just that good. And Ultraman just hasn't had hasn't yet had the depths of field, right? The level of competition is just not as high here quite yet, except for the top, maybe, one every world championship. So Michelle can take what she's done and parlay that into some big wins here, quite honestly, probably without being at her like absolute best. And perhaps I'd be interested to see how much, like how the time investment looks for her now versus before. I know that for my age group athletes that have set this as a big goal and they're trying to go from the world of Ironman to this, for them, this does look like more time, right? They're stepping up their commitment to training to prepare for Ultraman. And so I do, when I have my women that are setting this as a long-term goal, they are looking at, okay, at what point are my kids going to be having themselves? Are they going to, like, for the most part, I don't have, because also most of these women that I work with are also working a full-time job. So it's a full-time job, it's the kids, and it's the training. So for them, most of them are looking at when the kids are a little bit further into the teenage years, that this is something they're going to be shooting for. I had an athlete did her first one in Arizona. She did amazingly well, Sue Lau, and she's got 3 boys at home and works a crazy international job full time. But she has, a senior in high school, 1 in college, and then another 1 in high school. So they're a little bit older. They can drive each other around. She's kind of at that point in the child rearing stage. And so that's kind of what I see with the sort of mom crowd that I'm coaching.
I was just going to say that I just found that with spot on, it depends on the age of the kids. So I found, if I've got a mother who's baby's 6 months old, they get rid of biking and swimming, and we're just running, and they're going to run a marathon, and then they might find a 50K because it's so much more time efficient, and that's the new goals for the next little while the babies are young. And then gradually, still with long-term goals of wanting to do Ultraman or, other sort of ultra distance events. But they're, years down the track when life might be a little bit different. So it's just about adjusting the goals.
Mm-hmm. Now, as coaches, I assume you guys are keeping up on science and reading your journals regularly. But I jest, but I'm sure you do keep up quite a bit on what's going on. Is there anything, do you think, to the idea that women are more suited to the endurance events than men physiologically? Are we finding truth to that? What used to be a suspicion? Is there stuff coming out to back that up these days?
So I wanted to bring up, so I think the heat regulations is one of the studies that I've read. Like women have a greater surface area to mass ratio that helps with heat dissipation. So wherein it's, like especially when Ironman Kona or Ultraman, when there's heat, then it's a lot better for women to actually manage heat. And I'm sure you guys see like going to really hot for males in comparison to females.
Well, they have, they've done quite a few studies that have looked at the distribution of muscle type fibers in women, saying that women have more slow twitch fibers, and that they're thinking that might be something that is helping them to endure longer duration events. Mm-hmm. So, that's a possibility. And they do say with menopause too, that endurance becomes something that women are more apt to. And I know for myself, having a background of endurance, when I started to get into my journey there, my training totally changed to short, little bit more speed work, rather than doing the long slow distance. I knew I had that. I can go out and I can go forever. But that was the thing for me to kind of shift on my own training. And something that I do with my athletes now is looking at the base that they're coming into it with. But yeah, the muscle type fibers and that stuff, that's something that I have read, and a few studies about that.
Kate, Hillary?
No, I think that combined with
I can buy what they're selling. go, Kate.
I'm gonna add the fat metabolism also, because women typically have higher body fat percentage, so which is more efficient in metabolizing and during longer prolonged exercises. So the longer duration, then the more sustained energy, at least scientifically.
Kate?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with what they said, and said along with the mental toughness aspect. I mean, yeah, it's not. Yeah, you can expect the women to obviously perform better.
Here's a very quick break for our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultra Tri-Fest Canada. where you can race the traditional 515, a 515 relay, or a 515 nonstop. There's also a 360K format, which does not require a crew. And because we are hosting you in Whistler, there is also an ultra gravel rail. And if you've always wanted to go to a 515 World Championship, check out the information on the website about our new Worldwide Championships, which is available to every 515 racer of all time. We are now asking athletes to express their interest in attending the 2025 events. Email us at ultratrifestcanada@gmail.com to express your interest in joining us in 2025. This will help us to determine a viable field for each of the events, and you will not have to pay an entry fee until it is confirmed. Again, get the information from ultratrifestcanada.com, proud sponsor of 515 The Ultra Podcast. Another topic that I wanted to get into is just the idea of the fact that there aren't as many women participating in ultra as there probably should be. You know, I mean, I don't know what the exact percentage is. Maybe you guys have a better idea of the number, but maybe for Ironman, it might be 25% or whatever the number is of the men that are in the field. And in ultra, it seems like you might get it down to like 1 out of 10 is a woman. What do you guys feel are the reasons behind more women not participating in ultra?
I think it has a lot to do with what Kate and I kind of just talked about in terms of other shorter races being more accessible to that, you know, huge sort of percentage of the population. We call it women 25 to 50 that are probably trying to juggle being the primary caregiver,
right,
and work and training. So to Kate's point, training for even a marathon is just way more. I mean, I know as a mom with 4 littles from 4 to 7, my, you know, once multi-sport life has pretty much whittled down to primarily running 1 swim a week if I'm lucky and a couple of strength workouts. So, and just because running is the most bang for my buck. And so I think there's a lot of moms who are kind of in that sort of situation.
I agree with Hillary. Yeah. So like the age does matter because, you know, like when the age of the females were in, they're taking care of their family. But then when the kids already grown up, they're like, let's say they moved out already, right? But then they're already they're on 50s. So now they ask themselves, can I actually do the ultra stuff when my kid's already gone?
Mm-hmm.
And I've coached one of the Ultraman Florida, one Ultraman finisher, Claudia, and she was already 52, but she did not have kids to like take care anymore. And I think the time of like it's long. I mean, think about it. Ultraman, it is long. It does. I mean, Ironman 70.3 is already long for a lot of females who have kids. So I think that definitely, I totally agree with you, Hillary. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think there's also that there's, I know for some of the people that I've talked to that are considering it, that the idea of how much time it's going to take to actually do that is daunting. And I don't think it has to be, but I'm not sure that there's enough information out there. And I think it's great that, Kate, you're doing a training camp and having this for it's ultra training camp. But like getting the information out there, I don't think there is a lot of information about training for ultra and how people can actually do it off of the good base that they might have as an Ironman athlete or other.
Yeah. Totally agree.
I feel like the numbers they're getting better. I mean, they're not going to just boom in 1 or 2 years, but I do think more females are taking place in the events, and in particular, like Ultraman Australia has been getting, you know, the numbers of women racing there has been increasing most years, and it's been fantastic to see. And now with the inclusion of the 355 event, so a lot of them will take that step first because it's still 3 days, but it's in between an Ironman and an Ultraman. If I can get through that, maybe in a couple of years I'll commit to the Ultraman, and that's giving them the opportunity to get their feet in the water for that type of event, and then decide, okay, how much more is it going to take, and can I do that? So I think I do think it's getting better, and it will. I think it will increase. Yeah.
Do you guys think that maybe this also goes to, and I'm going to be careful again, the psyche of female is different than the man? Like the hubris of a man is like, I'm going to go do an Ironman, and then they just go and take off and away they go. And then they'll be like, oh, I'm going to go do an Ultraman, and they don't really think about it. Whereas a woman will ponder on it and think, and then maybe overthink and think it's going to be too much, in the way that sometimes women don't apply for jobs that they're fully qualified for because they'll feel like, oh, I don't feel like I'm qualified. Are there athletes that feel like they're not qualified, but they're perfectly qualified, that you guys are seeing in your coaching?
I would say absolutely. I think with my female athletes, there is 100% way more emotion involved than with the men. Like, it's not. I sometimes joke, Guy and I joke with each other that we need to go and get a psychology degree to help us with our coaching. Because that, you're right, they have the ability. They totally have the ability. But it's one of, until you've done it, like, they don't see that.
I think, though, that, I just went through this with my athlete, Sue, who had such a successful first Ultraman in Arizona. But I was having to talk her into the fact that she was ready for the weeks leading up to it. I've coached so many people for Ultraman now over, 15 years, and she executed one of the best Ultraman builds I have ever seen. And I've had athletes with way less life commitments than she had, not do that build. Not that they all look the same, but not do their Ultraman build as well as she did. She was absolutely nailing it. Of course, this build always has to include days where you're just destroyed and useless, because if you're not having those days, you're not pushing it hard enough. But she had a few of those, but she was nailing it, just absolutely nailing it. And she doesn't have the perspective that I do, obviously, because this is her first go. But the amount of times I had to talk her into that she's got this was unreal. But what I always told her was, and I do think this also helps us women in moving towards this event, is that I think if you lack that healthy, scared shitless fear of this race, you are not going to show up on that start line mentally or physically ready. You should be, I don't care who you are. I was, a decent pro when I took this on. Kate too. I was terrified, and even more terrified the second time because I knew what I was getting into. And so I think that kind of fear, motivates you to prepare properly and do that kind of amazing build that I just saw my athlete Sue do in spite of her wild life. But second, has you not expecting to just fly through the thing with, sail through the 3 days with flying colors, that you are expecting it to be hard. You're expecting the challenges. You're expecting to be humbled. And that's what I feel like so many women go into this race with. And that is an advantage in and of itself, because you've got to have that mindset going in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Christine, you do have a psych degree. So what's been your experience?
Class.
Yeah, no, the belief in self is huge. It's, just to know that everything that you're doing is making you capable of completing that goal that you've set for yourself. Absolutely. And it does take going through developing so many skills. That's, and yeah, I don't think that it comes naturally a lot of times for women. Sometimes it does, but it's an uphill battle. But really developing the skills and tools needed to kind of uncover their true potential. Just what Hillary's saying is that, and Kate, there's so many women out there that are capable of it, but they don't believe that they are, or they're not going to have the time, the resources, whatever it might be. But yeah, really building up their toolkit along the way. And that is one thing that I will say that I think women are much more open to. When you work with them, they will be open to, kind of delving into a little bit more of the mental aspect of the sport. And I mean, as professional triathletes, both Hillary and Kate, did you have a lot of mental coaching along your journeys along the way? And how do you think that helped you prepare? Sorry, I'm taking over your job here, Larry.
That's great.
So jump in.
Oh, no. Well, I think that Hillary made a really important point that, and for all of us, it's the fact that we can talk to our athletes or talk to other ladies from experience, I think plays a huge part. But I also think it's very important, for athletes like myself, Hillary and Dee Dee, for the ladies to know that, like Hillary said, we still go into the event like shit scared. Like, it doesn't matter, that we've done well before because, we know what we're in for. We know how much it's going to hurt. The first time when I did my first one, I remember like going to bed in tears then after day 2 because I had such a terrible day. And I said to Guy, I cannot run 84 Ks tomorrow. I cannot do it. It's not going to happen. And he had to comfort me, get me he actually gave me apple pie and ice cream for breakfast the next morning to try and make me feel better. And then once I got started, obviously, like anything, once you get started, it's fine. But we all feel the same way. I think it's important, for us to share that with our athletes and with other ladies so they know it's no different. It's just no different.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about mental coaching, to me, and this might not be the answer that a mental coach likes, but to me, that piece comes from making one's athletes do things in training that will bring you to that crunch time point in training and have to figure out what to do about it and make the choice not to quit, make the choice to push through, make the choice to dig deep. So that when you come to that moment, albeit by different means, at whatever point or many points over that 3-day journey of Ultraman, you've developed that mental muscle in training to respond appropriately, to respond by rising to meet the challenge. And so that is kind of how I go about it with my athletes. Like when we do our training camps, like Kate has coming up, I overload them over the course of 4 days intentionally because I want to see where they crack. And everybody's going to crack at a different thing, at a different point in the weekend, a different time. But when I see where they crack in training or when I see them crack when I'm at a race, then I know what we need to work on in the next build. And I design the sessions. Oftentimes I design a session not because it's like physiologically necessary, because I know this athlete needs this session to work out their mental limitations. So that's how we go about it.
Yeah. And I love what you were saying, Kate, about normalizing the fear and the intensity and the what's required. I think that's a huge part that professional triathletes that are still doing this, that they can share. I remember listening to Melanie McQuaid after her World Championship, and where she's gone from in her mindset and everything else, and it's great. Yeah, but it helps. I think it really does help. Yeah, so thank you.
Shangri-La, did you have something on that?
Yeah. So I want to add something on that one. So, I mean, some athletes, like, they're motivated when there's someone like, you can do this. Yeah. And then you tell them a story, but it's completely different when they're actually experiencing it and they could tell themselves, yeah, I did that on that workout. So for example, with the athletes I've coached, so what I've done is that, like, I kind of feed, like, I drop like an idea. Hey, what do you think about that race? And then they're like interested. When they're interested, I'm like, okay, let me see what they're capable of and if they can actually do it. So some hard workouts. And then when they started seeing it, that actually is already building their confidence And then I show them the tools. That is actually a road to the training for Ultraman or for an Ironman. And then because it's not necessarily just, you can do this or this person did it. Those are great, inspirational, but it's the action when they're actually experiencing it and they can tell it themselves. Maybe I can. And then they start, all right, what do you think, coach? So yeah, I think the experience itself. Yeah.
Hillary, I noticed that your coaches are almost all female. I think except for one. Is that by design? Did you do that on purpose? Is that?
Yes, we were really we were really an all female coaching team, and it was only in the last few months that we decided to expand into and add a guy to our coaching team, Mike Plumb, who is a fellow Canadian and he's a long time coach, been coaching longer than any of us. He's the oldest member of our coaching team, and had been doing. He's been involved with our camps for about 4 years now. So we decided to diversify. But yes, it was very much by design. We wanted an environment where, and as a result, the vast majority of our athletes are female, and we wanted an environment that felt welcoming and like a safe place for women to, openly chase their biggest, scariest goals and support one another. And so in adding Mike to our crew, he is somebody that has been vetted over the last 4 years by all of our athletes and campers. And so when I ran the idea of sort of expanding into adding a guy to our coaching team, when I ran it by all of our coaches, everyone's like, because I'm like, you guys, what do you think about adding a male to our team? And they're like, well, depends on who. And I'm like, well, how about like a Mike Plumb? Oh, of course. I was like a no-brainer. He's just the best, and everyone loves him. So it was an easy sort of expansion, and we're hoping that this then hopefully makes guys feel equally comfortable joining our crew. We do have a strong stable of men, but I would love to have even more of them. So, but they definitely have to be not afraid to get chicked, because that's kind of we just have such a strong crew of female athletes and coaches in our stable, and it's awesome.
Yeah. And overall, to all of you, how do you feel the community is, the female community, and supporting one another? I know that from time to time there are these groups that are all female going out and working together, or camps that are all female, and sometimes females can be even more competitive than men and be a little more, aggressive toward their opponents. So how do you feel that overall the female community is in supporting one another and lifting each other up and trying to get more people taking part?
Were you guys all in Kona last year?
Yeah, I was there, and I saw it. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was so amazing.
Different. So you guys feel that also in the pro? Because I was in the age group. So yeah, so it was like, oh, okay. You're all.
I wasn't racing. I was just coaching, and just soaking it all in. But I just thought
it was good.
The vibe was so unique and so special. I really, I didn't know what to expect, and it really. I've been to Kona a million times and been part of that race a million times, but it was truly unique in the best possible way. The vibe was just so cool. And we had, 19 women that we coached that race, and many of them were first timers, probably half or more of them were first timers. And they all just said the vibe, amongst the athletes all day long was just so, so special. And they're all just so eager to go back next year.
Yep.
So Shangri-La, you said you were racing it. Tell me how
I was there
for
too.
you.
So usually, well, when there's male and female, usually at the swim portion, you get bumped, but then I talked to the other athletes there in the age group area. So they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like females bump into each other. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's more like It's completely different. I do think there's a lot more support and kind of like friendly camaraderie. I mean, we're competing, but still, it's more of a nice competition, I think, as far as I saw. Yeah. So it was good. Yeah.
It was really special.
I've kind of gone through the things that I want to talk about. You guys throw out something that you feel is important to talk about under this topic of female in the sport.
To me, when I started with the Ultraman, one of the things that I worry is like the 3-day, you know, and one I wanted to mention is like menstrual cycle. So females usually, like athletes that I've coached as well, like, what if my period comes to my race day? What am I going to do? How does my performance, affect? So those are the things that one of the challenges that our female athletes, like bring up. And sometimes we do have like a separate master class to actually talk about the feminine stuff. And same thing as for males, because we also have male coaches wherein, like the male stuff, then they talk it in other master classes. But yeah, so like I think the menstrual cycle, the menopause, perimenopausal, the symptoms of it. So those are the things that usually come up with our athletes.
Kate, how about you?
I mean, yeah, it's a case-by-case basis because it's just different for everyone. And, some people have no problems and they can race during their menstrual cycle. Others, might suffer badly on day 1 or 2 and then know everything's fine. We always get them to track so that we know where it's going to be, what's going to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go that way because it does what it wants. And then put some, plans of attack in place if, as we get closer. Right. Definitely for, perimenopause and menopausal ladies, things have been changing now and in a good way. We have a particular nutritionist we work with now with a lot of our ladies that specializes in that area. So she's been helping them out with their training and racing nutrition, which, we wouldn't have had just a few years ago. Like it wouldn't have been something that we had, the opportunity to work with. Things with their training. I think whatever the situation is, you can prepare as best you can in advance. Like there shouldn't be too much that's going to be a surprise. And it's just a matter, if you're working with that athlete for a considerable amount of time, you can see some sort of pattern and be able to put something in place.
Do you guys find that a lot of your older athletes are on like an estrogen replacement?
More, my athletes are on it for symptom management. Basically, they're having extreme hot flashes, which is affecting their sleep patterns. And we know that sleep for any high performance training that you're doing is essential to have that. So for the majority of my clients, it's more symptom management that they're doing the hormone replacement therapy for.
Just on that note of hormone replacement therapy, one thing that I drive home and give a lecture about at least 2 to 3 times a year on our weekly Facebook live calls is that just because a doctor prescribes it does not mean it's legal for an athlete. No. So, this is something that we run into a lot because I think there is so much more knowledge around what we're losing over this phase of life. And many women and men also will go to a clinic guys go to an anti-aging clinic, or the woman goes to their female doctor. And, in addition to progesterone and estrogen, which can be very helpful in themselves, they get told that their testosterone is low. And so I can just give you this implant, or I can just give you this supplement. And you would be shocked at how many people think because a doctor prescribed it, it's fine. Don't even think to check.
Right.
And so I get on my soapbox about that, a couple times a year, just as we have new athletes coming in, and we're in the practice now when athletes come on board, asking them to disclose everything they're taking, including vitamins, because again, oftentimes people come and they've been my doctor prescribed this, and they have no idea because they're not someone probably who will ever get drug tested, but I don't care. Yeah. I mean, we are not, want to make sure that everyone's competing, on the level playing field. I mean, there's a reason that at Ironman, for example, women's performance, the age group times drop off pretty drastically around late 40s, early 50s. Like it's just, it is what it is, but that's fair. That's how, so I like that. That's my comment on that topic.
Okay.
I wanted to also bring up iron deficiency. So so my recommendation is like, for example, athletes who are going for like Ultraman or multi-day events, like the ones that I do. Definitely check with your doctor, check your iron before, or like even Ironman, making sure that you're on top of it. I learned from my own. So that was when I was doing my own Guinness World Record, the second one. We're in 23 Ironman in 34 days, that 2020. Yeah, I found out like, oops, I got to get my iron up. So I had to do that. So those are the things. Like, I thought I was okay because I was training okay, but then I had to go to the doctor to actually see that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have any other topics that you wanted to bring in?
Definitely the additional training that from what they're doing with a lot of the menopause and perimenopause research, the strength training for women, that's always been for the athletes that I've been training. Every time they hit 4, I was like, minute you hit 40, man, it's 3 times a week in the gym. And that was from way back when. And now it's like, I'm still pushing that part of it because I think that and now we're knowing that if they are on hormone replacement therapy or whatever, that there is going to be a decrease of calcium and the bone development and everything, so that the strength training is something, but putting that into their training programs. And I find that some of my older female athletes actually perform better when they're stronger. And I don't know if that helps a little bit with that mental capacity too, because getting into the gym and lifting some heavy stuff is, it does lift them up. They feel empowered, which is great. So that's one thing that I've definitely put a bit more emphasis on.
I want to thank you ladies for coming and having this conversation that's very female specific, so that we can hopefully encourage some more females to go out there and train and take part in these 5:15 events or the 3:55, if that's the stepping stone that they're taking to get there. Just that they're working toward those ultra. They're not afraid. They've got people like you that they can go to for guidance and support and other athletes, and to not be afraid to make that step up and join the 5:15 Ohana. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. So nice to see you, ladies.
Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah.
You too.
Nice to meet you all.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 5:15, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.